Okay, on the last video, we talked a little bit more about haplogroup, autosomal xDNA, and basically just this particular chart. Over here, you can choose the different kits that you want. I just went through and randomly chose a few. Obviously, I know a few of these and how we match. Others I do not. Up here, there's a submit button. And we're just going to do the 2D chromosome browser comparison. When you open it up, you'll see all the kits that I chose on the previous screen. I have all the different kits listed and how they match me on each chromosome. The color codes up here. I would suggest that you wouldn't look at pink and blue because those matches are so small that the probability of you finding a match just particularly on that centimorgan isn't very good. So I'll show you down here, but I ignore them. I want green, yellow, orange, or red. Once again, these are called centimorgans. And while I'm not saying completely exclude, like if there's another part of your chromosome, like another chromosome or something that you have a larger match on, then you can pay attention to the smaller matches. But if you have something on here or somebody in your list and the chromosomes are smaller, or not the chromosomes, but the matches are smaller than green, I would say it's really far out there that you're gonna find a match. But to each their own. So I know that this is just out of the kits that I chose to include. The matching segments, it will show each number. So I know my aunt's number 1 listed here. And we go down here and you'll see a 1. Now right here we get looking at the pink where it's just under 5 centimorgans, and then the blue is 5 to 10 centimorgans. But obviously, I'm going to pay more attention just because I know green is good and yellow and whatnot. So number 1 is here. Number 2, and this is where it's going to be tricky. Right here you see number 2, who I know is my second cousin, Angie. The thing is that if you look here at the first spot on chromosome 1 and the second spot on chromosome 2, you see a little overlap right here. Let me see here. Okay. Yeah, you see a little overlap here for 1 and 2. But something that you would want to do is you're going to want to go back to the very first page, just the gdmatch.com, and you're going to want to take these 2 kit numbers. I mean, obviously it may look different on your account when you're doing it, but just on my account, you'd want to take these 2 different kit numbers and you would want to compare them as 1 to 1 to see whether or not they actually match at all, in which I know that they shouldn't match because this is an aunt on my father's side, so this is my father's sister, and this is a cousin, but she's on my mother's side. If we remember back on here, I know that my Aunt Linda matches me through my father, and I know that my second cousin matches me right here. This is our common ancestors, being William Dunyan and Margaret Wayne Scott, our great grandparents. So we have one. One is on my father's side, and then number 2 is on my mother's side. So they're not going to match if you go over to the 1 to 1. So this is where you're going to start getting into trying to figure out how the different people match to you. So this is just chromosome 1. 8 of the check marks that I chose on the previous screen match me on chromosome 1. Obviously, you have like 8. This person just has that tiny little less than 5. then you have number 7, so this person's less than 5. Then you get number 6, which is this person. There's a larger match there. And that's just how they match. Then you'll have to start looking at the different chromosomes. Obviously, chromosome number 2, you have 8 as well, but they match in different ways. Like I said, I don't really bother so much with pink and blue. And they got this line to line these up. Right here you have number 1 and number 8. And they have a little line right here to say, well, the match on number 1 stops shortly over the line. And then down here, the match on number 8 starts slightly before the line. But there is some overlap, but I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. But it is there. Now, on chromosome 3, we have some nice large matches. Now, once again, you have these 3 people in which I know how she matches. I do not currently know how they match. But you would look at these matches. You would obviously compare each of them to each other to make sure. So you would want to compare Linda with Dana. And then you would want to compare Dana with this Linda, 2 different Lindas there. And then you would want to compare Linda Meyer with Linda Faust, just to see if they are true matches. Now, if Dana and this Linda matches this Linda on a 1-to-1, then you know that Dana and Linda are going to be on my father's side, because they have a pretty decent match of 20 to 50 centimorgans. That's a pretty decent match. I mean, if we go back over here, you start looking into how many centimorgans you can match at and how it falls. And you're going to want to do this for each chromosome. Each chromosome is going to be laid out. But obviously, like on chromosome number 7, you have the 4 different people who match me on chromosome 7. But it doesn't mean that they match each other. Or, like, if we start questioning where chromosome 2, or on chromosome 7, you have the second match starting midway through the first match, but you're also going back to the same predicament in the fact that blue is a pretty low centimorgan, yellow, and then this green up here would be the ones that I would focus on, and then you would just work your way down. Now, okay, so I have chromosome 8. I match right here for the second spot on chromosome 8, and then the first spot on chromosome 8. But once again, you would want to compare Lisa and Linda, in which, again, I know that they do not match, just simply because there's overlap there. It would make one think that there's a possibility that they would be cousins, but that's not true, because I know that if we go back over to my family tree, I know once again we have my aunt here who is my aunt on my father's side, so my father's sister. And then if we look back at the second match being Lisa, I know that Lisa and I are second cousins, because Lisa is a match to my maternal grandfather. So she's a second cousin here, where we were talking earlier about Angie being a second cousin as well. But Angie is a second cousin through my maternal grandmother. So if I was to test Angie against Lisa, Once again, they're both second cousins, but they're not going to match because they're on two different lines. Here you see Angie again, but we already talked about that. You know, Angie isn't going to match Linda because they're on two different lines. So you're going to want to come up with some way that you're going to want to keep an eye on who matches where and what. There are the matching segments right here that you see in the middle are start and stop sections of your DNA as to when in on your DNA on that particular chromosome where the DNA starts to match and where it stops. Now, since Linda's such a close match, being a paternal aunt, obviously there's a lot of start and stops. But that's something else that you're going to have to pay attention um, to see if, like Dana here, if she has a start or stop that's within the same range. You've already done a one-to-one match, and you know that, let's say, you know, they may match one-to-one, and then you start looking at the different chromosomes to see, so here is like Linda's number 1, Dana's number 3, so then 1 and 3. You'd want to start looking to see if it's possible, like number 2 kind of overlaps with Dana. So number 2, we go back here, and it's a woman named Delaney. You would still want to compare Delaney to Linda and Delaney to Dana, even if you know that Dana and Linda match. It's just a way to make sure that they all three list to match. But, you know, you just have to be able to keep that information some way or another. You may write it down on a piece of paper, or you might start like a chart on Excel or something so that you look at the different chromosomes. Now, this is only going to show chromosomes that are your different chromosomes. You have the 23 different chromosomes, not including, you know, the X chromosome or the Y chromosome. You're just looking at 1 through 23 in this section. Like this right here, if we go down to chromosome number 23, we know number 1, because she is a pretty close match, we know that she's a second cousin. So we would start looking, since there's a pretty decent little lump right here, saying that there's a probability that number 1 through number 6, they all have a common ancestor. But you gotta also remember, blue isn't a very large, even though the match here, there's that overlapping there, and it looks pretty promising that it would all match. It doesn't necessarily mean it, and you have to really question number 2 and number 3 being right here if they match. Now, looking at this, there's probably a good probability that all number 2 through number 6 do match, and they're going to be up the same line as my number 1, but they're going to be farther away. We know that number 1's a second cousin, so she's obviously going to share more DNA with me than these people. So then, because pink is more centimorgan than blue, then you would have to look at the pink centimorgans being a closer. They could be maybe fourth cousin or something like that. And then you would look at the blue being another generation back. So maybe fifth cousin, because they're sharing less centimorgan, and we know where our base is, and that would be a second cousin. So pink is so pink and blue are going to be less than the yellow because she's closer, and you would just start looking back at those matches. Most likely they do have a common match, but I'm not sure because I don't know how they match. And like I said already, you're also going to want to go back to the front page of gdmatch.com and make sure that you compare this kit number Lisa to the Brown, and then Lisa to the KY Gal, Lisa to Tammy, Lisa to Dana, and so on. So if they all did match, then you would want to go through and compare Brown to this KY Gal, Brown to Tammy, Brown to Dana, Brown to Linda, and then KY Gal to Tammy, Dana, Linda, and then Dana to Linda, and just make sure that it's consistent. It's a consistent answer that they do match.